How you doing, everyone? Welcome back. Well, I don't know if you've heard some of the stuff that RFK Jr. has said lately, but the guy is a moron, isn't he? This guy, the most recent thing that I've seen from him is that when he was a kid, now keep in mind, he would have been a kid, like a small child, back in the 1960s, right? So, when he was a kid, we had never heard of autism, ADD, ADHD, autoimmune diseases, lupus, a bunch of other things. He just went on, just some long list of things that, we had never heard of. When I was a kid, they didn't exist. Really? When you were a kid, they did exist. We didn't know as much about them back then, but they existed. We hear more about them now because, the reason we hear about them is because we've learned about them, and we've also learned how to treat a lot of those. Now, keep in mind, this is the same guy who went on this weird tirade about autism, excuse me, and how autistic kids will never have a productive life. They'll never work a job. They'll never pay taxes. They'll never go on a date. Some will never use a toilet on their own. Dude, that shows me that you don't know what autism is. There's a wide spectrum of autism. And most autistic people are very functional members of society. People like to say that vaccines cause autism, but autistic people are very intelligent. They are drawn to, typically, maths and sciences because that's just the way their brains work, and there's nothing wrong with that. So, do vaccines cause autism? No, I think it's more accurate to say that autism causes vaccines. But for this guy to just go on a rant like that, it shows me anyway, that brain worm that he had, it ate quite a bit. I mean, this guy literally had a worm eat his brain. This is the same guy who abandoned a dead bear in Central Park. I mean, really, how do you do that? By the way, bear with me here. I've got a little scratch in my throat that I've had for the few days, and also working on my second cup of coffee. Yesterday, I hadn't had my second cup of coffee yet when I recorded. By the way, I hope your coffee is good like mine. I use a local company that they roast their own beans. Anyway, got sidetracked with the coffee. Autism, lupus. Really, you're going on about things that, we have known about for a long time. A long time. In fact, have you ever seen the movie Rain Man? I would recommend watching that movie. Dustin Hoffman was brilliant in the way he played Ray, the autistic character. And some autistic people are not functional like Ray was not. I mean, it's not that he wasn't functional, but he wasn't. He wasn't one that. His case was extreme. But you know what? I know people who are autistic. In fact, my wife has a friend with an autistic child, and this kid is absolutely brilliant. We visited her one time. I played chess with her kid. If I remember right, he actually beat me. And, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not like some grand wizard of chess or anything like that. I'm kind of a mediocre player at best. But this kid, I don't know, he was, 8 or 10 years old at the time, something like that. And I had a hard time with this kid. An 8 or 10-year-old beating someone who's been playing for years? Yeah, I'd say that he's a pretty intelligent kid, right? I wouldn't want to play him today now that he's a teenager. I'd still play him. I would just probably lose in 4 or 5 moves. Yeah, RFK knows not at all what he's talking about. He's the guy that's supposed to make America healthy again, while he's the one that wants to deny all vaccines. Measles. Measles has made a return because of the attitudes around vaccines, led by guys like him. I mean, the guy is an environmental lawyer. If you know who Farron Cousins is, he has his own channel called Fair and Balanced, and he also hosts a channel called The Ring of Fire. And he has worked in the legal profession. He's not a lawyer, but he has worked in the legal profession. In fact, Bobby Kennedy used to be involved with the Ring of Fire, and Farron has said that Bobby Kennedy is actually a great environmental lawyer. But when he steps outside of his lane, he's an idiot. as he's proven with his weird conspiracy theories and the fact that he doesn't know, just because he never heard about certain medical conditions, that they never existed, right? There are medical conditions I've never heard of. I mean, I grew up in the 80s and I haven't heard of some things that we know about today. Does that mean they didn't exist back then? No, doesn't mean that at all. It might mean that I was a kid and just wasn't paying attention to stuff like that. Or it might mean that we've made medical advancements and we've made discoveries, right? It could mean that. By the way, I can't think of any examples off the top of my head. I'm just saying that that's the case. We are always learning new things, right? So kids growing up today will have never heard of some things that we will know about 20, 30, 40 years later, right? So, just because you never heard of it when you were a kid could mean A, you were a normal child that just didn't know a whole lot about that kind of stuff, because normal kids don't. Or it means that we didn't know very much about it, or we've learned more about it since then. I mean, there was a period of time when it seemed like cases of breast cancer increased. But did it really increase? Or was it the result of, mammograms being created and therefore making it easier to detect and therefore easier to treat? I think it's probably the latter. I mean, don't get me wrong, there could have been an increase, but it's more likely that we just learned more, and found ways to detect it and ways to treat it. And we have learned more about autism. We know that it's a spectrum. Have cases increased? More than likely not. What has increased is the ability to diagnose it and the ability to treat it, and the ability to recognize that it is a broad spectrum. You can be way over here, where you're like Rain Man, or you can be way over here. You are highly functional, but your brain just works a little bit differently. And that's really all it is. Your brain works differently. I mean, you right there watching this, right? Your brain doesn't work like mine. I'm not autistic, and I'm not saying you are either. You may not be, or you may be, I don't know. But no two people's brains work the same. I mean, my wife is sitting right over there, and her brain works differently than mine. That's just, the difference in human beings, right? Now, the autistic people, right? They don't necessarily need to be institutionalized, maybe in extreme cases, but I don't know enough about it to know if that's the case. Maybe some need to be institutionalized. Maybe some need special care. Most of them can function in society. They can hold down jobs. Some of them have families. They're not wrong, they're just different. Is it a disorder? Yeah, I mean, I've heard that it is. Is it a disability? Yeah, for some. For others, no. It's just a different ability. I mean, if you want to, again, going back to the example of Rain Man, the scene in the movie where the toothpicks were dropped on the ground. He knew exactly how many were there. It wasn't 500 like the box said. It was a few short. But, he actually saw that. Could any of us do that? Nope. But Bobby Kennedy is an idiot. He needs to stay in his lane. He doesn't know anything about the department that he leads. He's not making America healthy again. If anything, he's going to make it worse. Anyway, catch you next time.